All right, we're now going to have the opportunity to hear from the last of the three nominees for officers. This is Mr. Mark Clark, who's the nominee for Associate General Minister. And here to present the nominee is Pearson Kemp, the Chair of the Executive Council, and also Anita Bradshaw, the Chair of the Board of Directors of the Office of General Ministries.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good morning. Oh, you can do better than that. Good morning. That's a lot better. It has been our distinct pleasure and privilege to know and serve with our friend and colleague, W. Mark Clark. Anita, Mark, and I all came to the Office of General Ministries Board of Directors in the fall of 2005. Mark came from the Southwest Conference, Anita came from the Minnesota Conference, and I came from the Central Atlantic Conference. And we took leadership roles on the boards. We were all elected to leadership positions on the board, and Mark and I were appointed to OGM as OGM representatives to the Executive Council. So we have a lot in common, and we have spent some time together over the years.
As the years passed, I came to know Mark better and better. I developed an appreciation for his gifts, particularly the gift of quietly getting the job done. He chaired the board's Budget and Finance Committee, I chaired the Personnel Committee, and we worked very closely together. He also chaired the Committee of Reference for the Executive Council for General Synod. None of that is an easy task in this day and age, but Mark always got the job done. He led his fellow committee members through the tough decisions, all the while keeping good order and a good disposition.
When it became my responsibility to name the search committee, the city here, to find a nominee for election as the next Associate General Minister, I had no idea who the candidate might be, and I had no idea Mark would eventually be approached as a selectee. But when I heard Mark was a selectee, I knew the committee had done its job well. It had found the perfect candidate for another tough job. The committee could have done no better than to bring W. Mark Clark to you for election as officer of the United Church of Christ.
Let us tell you a little bit about the folks on the committee. Pearson first asked his conference minister, John Deckenbach, to chair the group, and then John and Pearson set about selecting the membership. They wanted diversity from all the corners of the denomination, by race, by age, by gender, by sexual orientation, by ecclesiastical standing, by geography, by any measure one could consider. And they wanted diverse skill sets because the Associate General Minister must be capable in so many disciplines.
A retired judge sat on the committee, a student sat on the committee, a housewife sat on the committee, church pastors sat on the committee, a state government employee sat on the committee, a political activist sat on the committee, a gifted fund manager sat on the committee, the general minister and president sat on the committee, a CEO of a huge healthcare nonprofit sat on the committee. They covered the theological spectrum, some liberal, some more conservative, in their UCC theology.
The committee considered a group of people just as diverse as them, blessed that the potential candidates represented a wonderful and diverse cross-section of the United Church of Christ, gifted and dedicated folks, each and every one of them. And when the committee had carefully and prayerfully considered all those wonderful people, they unanimously elected W. Mark Clark. Each member of the committee stood up and signed off on Mark, wholeheartedly endorsing him as their personal and collective choice as the next Associate General Minister of the United Church of Christ.
Fellow delegates, it is with joy and thanks to God for bringing us to this place that we present to you the Executive Council's nominee for Associate General Minister, our good friend, Mr. Wendell Mark Clark.
I guess I have to, that answers the question I get asked more than almost any other. Thank you, my sisters and brothers from the Southwest Conference. Good morning, brothers and sisters in Christ. I am pleased to see so many of you here this morning. My dear mother, who I think is right back there somewhere, instilled in me at an early age the importance of saying thank you. So would you please join me in expressing the appreciation we all feel for the hard work of the wonderful folks who served on this search committee. As you might imagine, these past few days have been more than a little nerve-wracking for me as I considered what it is I wanted to share with you this morning. The soaring rhetoric and wonderful preaching we heard from Ben and Jim left me a little in awe. But the more I thought about it, my original idea to just share a little of my own story seemed to be the right path to take. After all, unlike Ben and Jim, I have not been in a leadership position at the national level before. But before I do that, I want to add a word of appreciation for Callie and Steve and Edith. Callie and Steve I knew from my time and their days in the Southwest Conference, and their work at Whiter Church Ministries and the local church ministries has been a continuation of the wonderful work they did out west, and I've learned much from each of them. Edith I've come to know these past 6 years, and what can I say? I think it finally hit me about halfway through Saturday's evening celebration, when I had what could best be described as an OMG, that's oh my goodness moment, about the vast responsibilities of this associate general minister position. Edith has done an amazing job with grace and wisdom these nearly past 2 decades, and I continue to be in awe of her and so impressed with the team that she has put together. I look forward to the opportunity to work with them in the future. With that said, let me begin at the beginning. I am first and foremost a child of the United Church of Christ. My parents, Betty and Sheldon Clark, joined First Congregational United Church of Christ in Phoenix, Arizona when I was 1 year old. That's 1955 for those of you that like to do the numbers. While I'm not a cradle Congregationalist, I'm pretty close. I come on my mother's side from at least 3 generations of Presbyterian ministers, both of her grandfathers, her father, and her brother. But as sometimes happened, my grandfather had a parting of the ways with the presbytery in Phoenix, and my family needed to find a new church home. Several years later, my grandfather was also welcomed into the UCC and served the Union Congregational Church in Phoenix, and later joined the staff of the Church of the Beatitudes. More importantly, however, I am proud to stand before you today as a living testament to the value of youth and young adult ministries. I was a youth group leader at the local church and association level. I got my first leadership training at church camp and regional youth events. I learned so many really valuable lessons at First Church. Lessons like the importance of not wearing white socks with black pants when you're acolyting. And then there was that one about the importance of taking an antihistamine so you could breathe through your nose, so you could keep your mouth closed when you're sitting up in front of a group of people. My first lessons in public speaking were at that church's lectern. So much of who I am today is a result of the time and energy of many caring, supporting, and nurturing adults. Those wonderful Sunday school teachers, youth group advisors, camp counselors, and clergy, including Penn West Conference Minister Alan McClarty, whose first call was to First Congregational Church in Phoenix, where I was his first high school youth group president. You can imagine maybe the fun he had. Those adults whose commitment to local church and regional youth work were so important to me, just as they are to children and youth today. Well, I went on to college, where for 4 years I interned at the Campus Christian Center and served a year on the staff of the Flagstaff Congregational Church. I'd been taken in care of the association, as we used to say, and had planned to go on to seminary. But God had a different plan for me. The interests I had developed in drug abuse treatment and prevention and politics, both as a result of youth group activities, led me into a career in healthcare and human services with a healthy sideline in reproductive rights politics and community organizing. I've been married for 23 years to Stacy Parrish Clark, a former healthcare executive and real estate agent who's anxiously looking forward to returning to a land of 4 seasons where the temperature rarely exceeds 100 degrees. Stacy has 2 sons, Colin, who is 42, and Jared, who is 40. Colin's a chef in Nebraska, and Jared provides therapy and in-home support services for young children living with autism in Tucson. They brought more to my life than I ever would have imagined. But let me talk a little bit about what I think I can bring to the collegium table. I hope by now you can tell that I bring an undying love and commitment to the United Church of Christ. Our beloved church has been the central institution in my life, as many who know me will attest. A former pastor of mine loved to call me a church geek. I think Ben refers to himself as a church nerd, but I'm a geek. I have to admit it, I can easily get geeked up about the UCC, but certainly the search committee saw more, for I am not alone in my geeky UCC-ness. Professionally, my entire career has been spent working in nonprofit healthcare and human service organizations. I currently serve as the president of a nonprofit behavioral health prevention and treatment agency whose budget is over $34 million with a staff of about 325. In the early 1990s, for 6 years, I led a Washington, D.C.-based National Human Service Association. It was work not unlike that of our smaller conferences, of course without all the ecclesiastical stuff. We had 52 member agencies that voluntarily paid significant dues. And for that, we provided technical assistance, opportunities for collegial support, advocacy information, national standards, and an annual conference. You may see the connection. Over the years, I've led mergers of agencies and both grown and downsized organizations, and I've served in leadership positions of both state and national associations. As for my church involvement, during my adult life, I've belonged to 5 different UCC congregations in 2 different conferences, and have served on the councils of 4 of them, having been the moderator of 2. I've been a Sunday school teacher and a camp counselor. I served on the Southwest Conference Board of Directors and was its moderator while Callie was our conference minister. Possibly the most important thing I did is that I chaired at the conference level, is that I chaired the search committee which lured John Dorauer away from the Missouri Mid-South Conference to be our conference minister, which is one of my proudest accomplishments. And I've been active at the national church level, as you heard as well. I've attended the 5 previous General Synods and was chair of the Committee of Reference at General Synod 27, and have served on both the board of directors of the Office of General Ministries and the Executive Council. But if you'll indulge me for a moment, it is my recent local church experience that is most on my mind these days. 2 weeks ago, we held the closure service for First Congregational United Church of Christ in Tucson. Now, to some of you, a church begun in 1883 isn't really an old church. But from where Stacy and I come, that's old. In fact, in our earliest years, we owned the oldest Protestant church building in town. Our church's story is not unlike many we all know. In 1960, we had nearly 1,000 members. Our church was the university church in town. But over the years, we came to depend on the money of those who had come before us, and then it and they were gone. So the congregation sold its property and moved east in search of a new vision. Several years and 2 rental spaces later, we found ourselves once again with our own building and a new pastor, a new mission, and a plan to spend the remaining funds we had over the next 5 years to develop a ministry for what we now call extravagant welcome to those whose previous church experience hadn't either been very extravagant or so welcoming. It was exciting, it was rewarding, and it was an important ministry. But in spite of all of our best efforts, we were never able to turn the financial corner. And so we've decided to continue our ministry in a new way. Over the active life of the congregation, we birthed 3 other UCC churches, all of which still have vital ministries in our community. Once the sale of our property closes and we wrap up our affairs, the remaining funds will go to the conference for the purpose of starting a new church committed to a ministry of continuing testament, extravagant welcome, and changing lives. This is how we will honor the commitment of those who came before us and to those who will come in the future. It is our way of imagining what is possible. But it has been tough, bittersweet work. I tell you this to let you know that while I grew up in a big steeple downtown church in Phoenix, and I have more recently led a large human service organization, closest to my heart is a worshiping community of 25 to 40 folks working hard to take care of each other and to make a difference in the lives of their community. And I also know what it feels like to know that sometimes at the end of the day, hard work and best intentions are simply not enough. We have to sometimes do something totally different. And it may not be something we really want to do, but we do have to do it. One of the search committee's first questions to me was, why would anybody want to move from the sunny Southwest to Cleveland for a job that might only last 2 years? As I spent time last summer thinking and praying about applying for this awesome position, I can clearly remember sitting on a plane going somewhere, I can't even remember where, but I can remember being filled with a clear understanding that it was now time for me to pay back all those wonderful UCC folk, clergy, lay, men, women, youth, and seniors who have so graciously and lovingly invested in me over the years. So let me leave you with one last story. I went to Synod as a visitor. I went to Synod in Atlanta as a visitor. I wanted to be there so much I slept on the floor of my pastor's hotel room. I sat in the audience during the debate on the marriage equality resolution and found myself in front of a conference youth delegation. I think it was Iowa's. As the vote was called, those wonderful young people reached out and grabbed each other's hands, and I could hear them praying. And then after the vote, we all cried. It was one of the most moving moments of my life. It is for those young people and the countless others in our church, young and old, and for those new folks yet to come, that I want to do this work. Our message and ministry of continuing testament, extravagant welcome, and changing lives is so important in today's world. As the writer of the 12th chapter of Hebrews put it so well, therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us run with perseverance the race set before us. As a lover of history, I live with the ever-present sense of a cloud of witnesses. And this is a race to which I feel called and for which I believe I am well prepared. The search committee, the board of the Office of General Ministries, and the Executive Council each tested that sense of call and agreed, for which I will be eternally grateful. And I hope you will give me the gift of the opportunity to serve as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark.